If you love cranberries like I do and you're looking for a festive and tasty treat that you can have on your dessert table without feeling that you're depriving yourself, I may have the perfect solution for you here. This is Pound Dropper's Easy Light Cranberry Cobbler. Comes together very quickly. But whether we like it or not, you'll have to wait to find out because I don't even know yet. So if you'd like to see how this is made and whether we liked it or not, stick around because it's coming up next.
Recipes with Roy, it's time to get lean. Tasty creations, low calorie cuisine. Grab your apron, let's whip up some joy. Weight loss inspiration from Recipes with Roy.
Hello friends, and welcome back to my kitchen. And if you are new here, welcome. My name is Roy and I am here sharing recipes that can help me on a weight loss journey and hopefully you as well. Now today I am doing another Thanksgiving recipe, getting prepared for the holiday. But this is not one of mine, as I mentioned last week when I made the orange ginger cranberry sauce. That one was mine, but the rest for this month will not be mine. This one is coming from Pound Dropper, and it is for her Easy Light Cranberry Cobbler. I wanted to make sure to share a dessert because that's often where we miss out during the holidays when we're on a weight loss journey, is with the desserts. We're often afraid to indulge because we know that we might overindulge. At least that's the case for me. So I thought this was a perfect recipe to bring out because you're going to want a dessert, and why not have one that you can have and not feel guilty about. Now I haven't made this before, but it's relatively simple, and I am going to make a few minor little adjustments for my personal taste. You don't have to do that, but I will let you know what I'm doing. So what are the ingredients? Well, let's go over them. I have here some cooking spray, and she doesn't list it in the ingredients like I typically do, but it is in the recipe, so I wanted to make sure that I brought that out. Here I have a Pillsbury zero sugar yellow cake mix, and she does specify Pillsbury. I'm not sure if that's because of the way she prepares it. It works best with that. But I figured I would stick with what she has, even though I do have a sugar-free cake mix recipe on the channel. And I will link to that up here if you're interested in that. But I wanted to stick with what she suggested so that I didn't mess anything up. Now here I have my white sugar replacement, and that's not listed in the ingredients either, but it is mentioned at the end. But she doesn't mention granulated sugar replacement, which is what that is. She mentions confectioner sugar replacement. But I'm going to show you how easy it is to just make your own. Here I have two 12-ounce bags of cranberries, and these are frozen. You don't have to thaw them ahead of time because we are going to be cooking the cranberry part of this on the stove top first. Here I have 1/2 cup of water, and you could probably use almond milk if you wanted to bump up the flavor a little bit, but I didn't think it would do that much. I'm just sticking with the water. Here I have 1/2 cup of unsweetened applesauce. Now those are going into the cake mix, and the cake mix actually says 1 cup of water and 1/3 cup of oil, which the applesauce is replacing. But I think because this is going to be a cobbler, she wanted it less cakey, so it's less water and just a little bit more of the applesauce to give it a little moisture. Also going into the cake are 2 eggs, and those are at room temperature. Anytime you're baking, just so things blend together more easily, you definitely want to have them all at room temperature. That way they're ready to commingle. If things are cold, they're less likely to want to mingle together, so you want to have them at room temperature. Here I have 2 tablespoons of light butter. Now she recommends the Land O'Lakes, but I use the I Can't Believe It's Not Butter Light, which personally I think is a bit lower and better on bites and points, but you use whatever light butter you use. Now here I have 1 orange, and I'm not using the entire orange in this. She has in her recipe a tablespoon of fresh orange juice. You don't have to really use fresh. If you have a bottle of like the low sugar orange juice, just use that. But I'm going to use the fresh orange juice because Paul wanted some orange juice this weekend, so I figured I might as well get a few oranges. I'm also going to bump up the orange flavor in the cranberries by using some of the zest. She does not do that in the recipe that she put out, but that is where a lot of the oils are that give us the flavor. Like if you're using orange extract, they extract that flavoring from the peel. So I'm going to be using a little bit of zest just to bump up the orange flavor in this. Here I have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar replacement. Now she recommends brown sugar for this, so that's what I'm using. Honestly, I'm sure you could get away with just using regular white granulated, but I'm going as close as possible to her recipe. Here I have 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and some nutmeg. Now, those are not in her recipe either. I thought I would bump up the flavor, especially for the holidays, with a little bit of cinnamon and a hint of nutmeg. Nutmeg, you don't want to use too much. And this is an actual nutmeg. You can use the stuff in the jar that you get at the store. I always have fresh nutmeg on hand, so that way I can easily just add a little bit and I don't have to worry about it going stale. But nutmeg is definitely a festive flavor, so I like adding that in here. You don't have to add either of those spices because they're not called for in Pound Dropper's recipe. All right, so those are all of the ingredients. Let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. All right, so I extracted a tablespoon of juice. That was about half of the orange. So I also will strain it just to keep some of the pulp out of it when I'm juicing it. You don't have to, but I just prefer it a little cleaner. And I'm also going to be zesting this half of the orange. Probably not all of it, maybe about half of this. Typically, you wouldn't want to zest after it's already been juiced. You want to zest first and then juice, but I'm a rebel and I'm going against tradition. You want to do that typically because you have more of a sturdy surface to zest. But I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to show you how I zest it rather than showing you how to zest it and then have to take time to do the juicing. I just figured I'd make it easier on myself. All right, so I have my saucepan here. To that, we are going to add cranberries, both bags, orange juice, butter, brown sugar replacement, and some zest. And I'm just zesting it directly into the cranberries. I'm not gonna worry about measuring it because I'm just trying to get an extra bump of orange flavor and I'm not really doing it to any certain measurement. Okay, so that's all in. She then says to cook this over medium high. So I'm gonna turn that on. And what we're going to do is just get this all to cook down. And it's going to, of course, melt the frozen cranberries first. But then the cranberries, once they get hot, they're gonna start to burst. And that's going to give us some thickening agent, the pectin that's going to be coming out. So you want to cook these until they start to thicken. So let me get this going and I'll be back. So it's been actually about 11 minutes and that's just thickened from the pectin that comes out. As I've mentioned before, pectin is what they use to set jellies and jams, and that is kind of what you're looking for here. So that's good. We're gonna set this aside because she says to let it cool for about 10 minutes. I was gonna try to just spread it out into my pan, my 9x13 baking dish, but it's Pyrex. And because it's still a little cold from being on the counter, I don't want that discrepancy to crack the Pyrex. If there is a shift in temperature too abruptly for Pyrex, it will shatter. So that's why I'm not doing it, and that's also why they suggest you don't put it under a broiler because it will be too intense of a heat. But while we're waiting for this to cool a little bit, we are going to work on the cake or cobbler portion of this recipe. So I have my bowl and whisk here. You could use a hand mixer if you want, or you could even just use a spatula, but I wanted to make sure that this was thoroughly combined. And to the bowl, I'm going to add in cake mix, cinnamon, and a sprinkling of nutmeg. And now I'm just going to whisk this together just because I want those spices spread throughout the cake batter. You would not have to do this if you were not using the spices like I am. But I want to make sure that those get spread evenly throughout. Okay, so that's dispersed. Now I'm going to add in the eggs. water and applesauce. And I'm gonna break up those eggs a little bit. You could whisk them a little bit first just to make sure that they get dispersed, but just breaking them up in the bowl should be fine. So now I'm just going to gently bring that flour down before I start whisking too vigorously and get a flour shower all over the place. So once that starts to get incorporated, you can whisk that in. Now I also wanted to mention that you use 1 fewer eggs than there are on the box as well. So this batter is going to be a bit thicker than it would be as a cake batter, and that's what you want for a cobbler type of recipe. And you just want to whisk that or beat it if you're using an electric beater, just until it's combined. And if you're whisking it, you want to make sure that you tap it on the bowl on occasion, because you will get some of the dry bits staying inside the whisk, and you want to make sure everything is well incorporated. Okay, so that looks good there. I'm going to bring over my 9x13 pan, and I've already sprayed this with some cooking spray. And to this, I'm going to spread out our cranberry sauce. Now, one thing I am a little concerned about is how little sugar there is in the cranberry sauce. If you saw my orange ginger cranberry sauce from last week, I used about a cup. So I'm not sure how sweet this is going to be. I'm hoping that the cake or cobbler part is going to have enough sweetness to counteract the sourness of the cranberries, but we shall see. All right, so that's in. I'm going to spread this all out onto the bottom of the pan here. You want a nice even layer. And then what we're going to do is put our cake batter on top. And you could swap out the spatula. I'm not that worried about it. It's all going to be going together anyways. So I want to dollop that on, and then I'll spread it out after. Just get that cranberry covered up, and it should cover it all fairly well. This would normally fill a cake pan on its own, although obviously with a little bit more liquid than what we added to it. Now I'm just going to spread this on top and get this as even as I can, making sure to get those edges so that the cranberries are basically sealed underneath, and just smooth that out so it's as even as possible. All right, so there we have it. I'm just going to push any batter that's come up the sides down to join the rest of it, because I don't want that to burn as the cake is cooking, the cobbler. So now I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. This is going in for, she says, 22 minutes, until a toothpick in the center of the cake, make sure you don't go down into the cranberry, comes out clean. So this will be ready hopefully in about 22 minutes, so I'll be back. All right, here we have it. The cranberry cobbler from Pound Dropper. Now mine went for about 25 minutes, but in her directions it does say 22 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. So there it is, it smells great. Now you have to let it cool for at least 10 minutes, and then she recommends putting on the confectioner sugar replacement. As this is cooling, I'm going to show you how I would make some confectioner sugar just using the regular granulated. This does not work the same with regular sugar, because regular confectioner sugar is powdered sugar, but it also typically has cornstarch added to it. So all I'm going to do, I have my little spice grinder. It's actually a coffee grinder, but I use it specifically for spices. And I'm just going to put in probably about 2 tablespoons. I think that should be plenty to cover this. 1, 2, then put on the lid. And I'm going to buzz this. I'm also going to shake it while I do it, because typically the blade, as it's going around, things might settle a little bit. So I'm going to blend it and shake it at the same time. And that just took about maybe 15 seconds, and I can see it's already powdery from what little drifted out here while I was shaking it. Now I'm going to turn this upside down, tap it, and try to get all of that into the lid. And there we have some confectioner sugar replacement. And you can do this if you need a larger amount for whatever it is. Just buzz it up in a little blender and it'll be fine. I prefer using the little spice grinder, the coffee grinder, because it's smaller and it lets you do smaller amounts more easily. But that's ready for me. I also have a little sieve. I like to put it in here and then sprinkle it over just to get any chunks that may still be there from the processing, and just shake that over. It's also easier to put it in here and just tap all around, so that way it gets dispersed more easily than if you just try to sprinkle it on top. All right, so while this is cooling, I will also go over the nutrition facts for this. Now, Pound Dropper has this coming out at 4 points per serving. This will serve 12. And each of those servings, she has coming up at 4 WW points. And I can confirm that that is what I got as well, whether you're on the Healthy Better Balance plan like I am, or on the WW point system. Now, if you're following calories, each serving is 165. And if you're following macros, the fat is 3.2 grams. Saturated fat is 0.9 grams. Protein is 3 grams. Carbs are 40.8 grams. Fiber is 2.9 grams, and sugars are 3.5 grams for 1/12 of this recipe. And it's still only been a few minutes, so I'm gonna keep letting this cool before I sprinkle the confectioner sugar on top, because if it's too warm, all that's going to do is just melt right into it, which would add a nice flavor, but you wouldn't actually see it. So if you want it for a presentation, then wait until it cools a bit. But I will have the link to this recipe on Pound Dropper's site down in the description box. I'll also add the few little changes that I made in case you wanted to follow suit. But we don't even know if I liked it yet. So I'm going to put right here whether we liked it or not. But I hope we like it. I love anything cranberry. So I'm really looking forward to having this later. But the link for this, I will link directly to Pound Dropper's recipe down below in the description box. I will also add any changes that I've made and any that I might make based on whether we liked it or not. Also down in the description box, you'll find links to my stores, to my Amazon storefront where you can find my cookbook. There's a direct link to the cookbook down there as well. If you are looking to get somebody who's on a weight loss journey a holiday gift, that might be the perfect thing for them. There's also my social media down there. And if you wouldn't mind giving me a like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Okay, I'm gonna let this cool a little bit more before I powder it with sugar, but I hope that you're gonna give this a try this holiday season. Make sure that you have something that you can enjoy on the dessert table. And until next time, bye.